First of all, it's good to see you. You've had a lot on your plate. You've been getting a lot of stuff done. Your site looks great. So congratulations on that project. It's going really well.
Yeah, yeah, man. Thanks. I'm happy with it. And I'll say it now because it's going to be coming out within the next few days, hopefully. And I know I mentioned this to you. I'm going to get a mobile app up. Um, it's
Yep.
so funny. The development wasn't the hard part. Like I developed it in like a few days, right, with AI tools. Getting Apple and Android, but mostly Apple, to like approve you, it's a whole process. I didn't know it was that difficult, but I'm just going through all that, bureaucratic nonsense in terms of dealing with them. And then we
hmm
should have apps up, which I'm really excited for because, from what I've seen, I think there's a big hole in the space for a really good mobile app because, the really big one is RV tournament, but everyone says they hate it. So,
RV tournament is such a weird thing because it's not bad. It's billed as something everybody can do, and then it presents probably the most difficult kind of RV that exists, which is
what, self-judging?
multiple target self-judging RV, where you get to see both of the targets once you're looking at your feedback. It's just like if you're on the subreddit, it's like every week somebody's like, why did I see the wrong target in RV tournament? Or why did I see both targets, one laid on top of the other one in RV tournament? Like it's working, but this is weird. It's because you're doing the most difficult thing there is in this whole field right when you're starting off. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's tough. And I think for other reasons people don't like it. And the direction that I'm trying to go with the mobile app, which I've already built out, it's pretty I wish I had my Android phone here so I could demo it. But I'm basically making it like a social media platform. So like right now on ARV Collective, like the website, you just go through a database and it just shows you from most recent to oldest sessions. I built like an algorithm. Like literally, you know how like if you're on like Instagram or you're on Twitter or something on your phone, you swipe down and it gives you a new one.
yeah.
I built like a random feed, and there's a lot you can
Oh,
double tap
nice.
to like, you can comment. There's like a whole like so it's basically a social media platform, but for remote viewing sessions. So I think people are really gonna like it. I'm excited for it.
That's super good. There are so many opportunities on your platform, on Chase's platform. Like there, from a research standpoint, having such a large pool of users gives you so many options. One of the things I think about is repeat targets.
Mhm.
Um, I want to study that. I want to study it because there's some, what's her name? Lori Williams talks about returning to a target multiple days in a row intentionally before you see your feedback. That taking a break, returning to your target, taking a break, returning to your target, that the same process that happens when you do multiple scans of a target, the opening of the aperture, that's sort of an extreme result of that when you take multiple days off. And so I've thought before that could just be a functionality of the site, that people could opt in to a specific experiment where they have to do a session for 3 days consecutively on the same target before they get to see their feedback at the end of the third day. And then that could help to alleviate the surprise that happens whenever a person does a session and they see their feedback and it's a target they've already had before. Because what you're doing when you throw people that surprise, what you're doing is you're kind of altering the mental contract that they had, the understanding that they had whenever they went into the process at the beginning, that they were going to be viewing something completely unknown. And then they see the picture and they're like, wait a minute, I've seen that before. The reaction aspect of feedback is super important. And so you want to make sure that moment of reaction to your feedback is as sort of cut and dry as possible. And that would be a way to sort of organize that experience if you wanted to study repeat targets in a way that doesn't alter the reaction to feedback and maybe throw off the session data as a result. The other thing I thought about, gathering groups of people for the same targets. Right now we have weekly targets on social RV, and there are other ways you could do that. Like you could have teams with assignments. And I think you're already halfway there with the ARV thing. And I can't wait to see what that ends up looking like. But having teams that get like, imagine being on one of these teams and you're on an app and all of a sudden you get a notification from your app that your team has been tasked on a target. Wouldn't that feel pretty cool?
It'd be so cool, especially if the target's meaningful.
Yeah. Exactly. Like that RV the News project that I had going on for a little while. What if it's like an extreme moment in geopolitical history, and all of a sudden you get a notification that your job is to look at what the picture at the top of Drudge Report is going to be tomorrow? Like, and your team is supposed to look into the future to see what the picture is going to be at the top of this news site. Like, it could be meaningful. They could be real, useful targets. But
Yeah,
anyways,
totally. I love those ideas, and those are some of the reasons why I love the space so much and I love actively participating in it. There is so much to be done and so much to be discovered from a user experience point of view and from a
mhm.
research point of view. Like the field has been so chronically understudied compared to the potential value and the merit that it has, that it's like there are like discoveries, like we don't even understand the causal mechanism yet. We don't understand, like, there have been certain hypotheses and a little bit of good data about like certain correlative variables in terms of what helps or hurts remote viewing, precognition, whatever. Like there's so much out there to discover. There's so much out there in terms of like a user experience that can be built. I truly believe that this is going to be able to be people's careers in the not too distant future. I think
I
you're going to have
agree.
people who literally their job is to practice and get better at this, and they get paid to execute upon it. So from all those points of views, I'm so excited. There's so much progress to be made, and it's just waiting there for anyone to do.
Yeah, absolutely. It is the cutting edge right now of a field that it hasn't been pioneered. Like sci as a field of engineering, it's brand new, it's fresh for the taking. And anybody who's willing to risk dipping their toes into this thing that's kind of difficult to talk about right now, they're in a position to really benefit. Let's look at some of your sessions. I've got questions. I looked through some of these yesterday, and
Yeah, I saw you were
I was like,
commenting.
I want to dig into these. And I've looked through your sessions before, but with a targeted eye of like, I want to ask them about that. It sort of changes your perspective a little bit. I'm going to try and share my screen here.
Yeah, no worries. Take your time. I can cut it if need be. Okay, I can see Zoom.
All right, you can see Zoom. Cool. And I'm in the lower left corner. Is that right?
You're in the top corner, but it's okay.
Does it work? Okay, it
Yeah, yeah,
works.
yeah.
So this one right here, this was my
Mhm.
favorite for a number of reasons. I love the way you talk about this. Your hold on, let's get this guy out of here. There we go. Singular, smaller object, kind of irregular, darker colored, almost protrusions or spikes coming out of it. Really weird. Not exactly sure what it does. Very curious about this object. The spikes, protrusions, that feeling, it's such a good gestalt for this target and this little guy. Like the very first thing you react to when you look at it is this is a weird looking thing with spikes coming all out of it. I don't have much reference for this. It's just a really good description. Was that like a feeling like you were running your hand over it, or like describe that process?
Yeah, so with this precognition or remote viewing, so first of all, I should say that when I talk to people, I've never been formally trained, and I've gotten some negative feedback about that. I think the way that I do things is, commonly considered in the field to be not correct. So I want people to go into what I'm saying with a grain of salt, and just
I
explore your
have
own
very
methods.
strong feelings about that concept, by the way. We'll talk about that in a second, but go
Okay,
on.
we'll get to it. Yeah, so with me, the way that I go about sessions, it's very intuitive, and I really don't like to spend a lot of time. And I think that's the thing that people most disagree with. Not everybody, but I've heard some negative feedback. Like there's a thing in remote viewing where it's pretty commonly accepted that remote viewing is like anything else. It's like art, where like the more time you spend on it, the better the painting's going to be, right? A 5 second sketch is going to be much worse than a painting that you do for 2 years, right? Um, in my experience, that isn't the case for me because the longer I spend on it and the more details I get, it doesn't make the details more high fidelity. I found that the highest fidelity and the most accurate details that I get are literally the first 5 to 15 seconds I get. And it's almost like looking through a very, very, blurry camera lens or something like that. It's almost like it's very low resolution. I can barely tell what it is, but if I try to like squint and like logic through what I'm looking at in terms of this blurry picture, I often go off the rails. So my sessions literally are like I sit there with my eyes closed and I maybe gather information for 10 or 20 seconds, and then I spend as much time typing as I do gathering the information. Um, I'm very heavily biased towards visual and spatial things with the information that I get. Um, the first piece of information that I get is basically size, shape, and color. Right, those are the
Hmm.
main things. And then, really, the only secondary piece of information I get after that is I try to figure out the purpose. I can't tell what the purpose is off of seeing it. Like, I can't look at something and be like, "Oh, I know what that is," because the information isn't high resolution enough. But I almost get a feeling. I tend to be pretty good at telling if something is a structure versus an object versus whatever else it may be. Um,
Hmm.
but that's it. So, with this one, like you could see in the session, I could tell that it was a singular, smaller object. When it goes into the color, the darker colors, the irregular shape, and then I, detail the spikes. And this one's unusual. I'm not usually very good. You could see the last sentence I said I'm curious about it and it's really weird and I'm not sure what it does. That's the
Hmm.
sense I got, but normally I'm not very good or I don't get impressions like this. So it's interesting that I got it for this one.
So, first thing I would say is that all those strange feelings, I'm very curious about this object. I'm not really sure what it does. This is really weird. Think about being a small child and seeing an animal you've never seen before. Um, and also, I wouldn't be surprised if the more time you spend reflecting on sessions like this and the feelings that you had in session, um, you might then in the future recognize some overall nature of a target like this, like life form. Sorry, I got a life form next to me right now. Cat's gonna get in here and mess things up. Um, what happens is a good hit, your subconscious is teaching you how it wants to communicate with you. And those feelings in the future might bubble up again, and you might be like, "Oh God, this feels really weird. I really want to know what this is. It's super curious to me. Wait a minute, that's the same feeling I've had before when I'm looking at a life form." And that moment is sometimes when the aperture opens up just a little bit more and you get just a little bit more data. Um, the the idea that there's a right way to do remote viewing is completely false. I want to make sure I get that out here right now. There are ways that have worked for other people. There are methods that you can learn. But one of the pioneers of this whole field, Russell Targ, he said, "I can teach you everything you need to know about remote viewing in 15 minutes." Joe McMoneagle has said the exact same thing. He's said that sometimes it feels like he's guessing. Like the the idea that there is a formula you can follow that is the right way, that's incorrect. And we need to sort of push back on that quite a bit. This is a very personal process. And everybody's subconscious is going to teach them how to receive this information in a personal manner. So you don't need to take that seriously. The one thing I'll say about some of the feedback you've gotten with regards to the amount of time that you're taking, I don't think you're wrong in going for your first initial impression of the first 15, 20 seconds of your target contact. Why not do that over and over and over again? Like instead of just getting one bite at the apple and getting that, 2 to 3 minute session where you're typing out what you had in the first 20 seconds of target contact, the act of making contact with the target and receiving that burst of data and trying to walk through the sensory impressions that you receive, that's one scan. If you do multiple scans, you are going to open the aperture to your target and you're going to learn different things about what happens at different points in opening the aperture. You're going to learn the way it feels whenever you do get a great hit right out of the gates, and the way it feels whenever you can't really get any impression at all and you have to just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. Anyways, I could talk about that forever, but no,
I
don't
actually,
don't take it seriously, this idea that there's a right way to do this. This is a mystery we're working into. It's not a formula.
yeah, and I'm fascinated about that, right? Because I know that you do multiple scans. I would be worried about, I want to try that, but what my immediate instinct would be, and a question I have for you, do you have a hard time when it comes to when you're doing the same target and you know it's the same target? How do you prevent analytical overlay or prevent the information you got from previous scans from tainting in your mind future information? That's what I would be worried about.
So, first thing is you don't commit to any of it. You remember in your session that you don't know what the target is. That should be your mantra. You are not going to guess this target correctly. That's your mantra. And so, after every scan, you just remember that you might have gotten a tiny piece of it. You might be describing a zoomed in aspect of one part of the picture. You might be getting a general feeling that's going to develop into more details later on, but you don't know. And if you can remember that, then with every scan that comes out, you're accepting the possibility that it could be completely different than the previous scan. And the more you do this, the more examples you're going to have of times when every individual scan was completely different, and then you see your target picture, and every one of them was correct. The missile, uh, the missile session, great example of that.
Mhm.
One of them I had a dark, shadowy well, and the other one I thought there was something poking out at me like a nose. There couldn't be more different, and both of them were correct. So I don't.
You're okay with
You gotta.
conflicting information is what I'm
You
getting
have
from
to
this.
struggle. You
Mm,
do have to struggle. And one of the struggles is trying new methods. Here's that cat I was talking about. Sorry about this.
it's okay.
Get, get out of
You have
here.
a visitor.
Yeah, we have a visitor. You are in remote viewing trying to wander through a new aspect of reality, right? This is something people don't do in their everyday experience. It should be a struggle. This should not be easy, and your first attempt at figuring out how to do it should not be correct. You have to struggle. You have to change things. You have to experiment. You are on a voyage into the unknown in a way that most people aren't ever going to experience. And so, like, try different things. If I were in your position, me personally, I would create a completely new account on my own site and I would try a completely new way of remote viewing for 50 sessions.
Mm,
And then I would look at the data between the two of them and I would just see. And then I would do that over and over and over. That's what I did when I was starting off. When I was starting off, I thought I was told CRV is the way to go and you should only learn that one way. And I tried it for about a month and I felt like I was forcing everything. And I would get good hits sometimes, but most of the time I just felt like I was just making things up. And so I gave that up and I started trying natural remote viewing, and I had more success with that. And then I got into the transit line that Prudence Calabrese did with her version of remote viewing. She goes by Birdie now. Um, but it was an evolution, and I'm still evolving. I'm probably going to change it up before too long with your project because we're going to be trying to put out more and more sessions. And so doing a 40-minute session like the way I do right now probably isn't going to be as feasible. Um, but I'll say this for the struggle. You tend to get a higher hit rate the more you experiment. Just going one way over and over and over again, you might get like an occasional really good hit, but your hit rate is going to be probably below statistical significance. But if you if your goal, if your intention is to always have better hit rates, then your process is going to evolve in the direction of that intention. And because it's a real phenomenon, you can get better at it. Anyways, I've been talking this whole time. This is your interview.
That's
You
great.
want
This is this
you
is this is phenomenal. It's so I love listening to you talk about this stuff because it's so clear how passionate, like truly passionate you are about it. It's very inspiring. It makes me want to do more sessions right now. I'll have to wait till
you,
after we're done though.
you should. I think everybody should be doing more sessions. I personally should be doing more sessions. I haven't done enough lately. This next one that you had was completely insane, and I loved it.
Oh yes, this is a fun one.
Everybody needs to understand how nuts this is. Naming a target is should be impossible, and it happens way more often than it has any right to happen in remote viewing. But still, it's rare for individuals. I think I've seen maybe a half a dozen named targets on social RV. Um, and in this case, Matt wrote yellow, energetic feeling like warmth, heat, electricity, nuclear, source of light, ball of energy. That is a Targ 7 where a viewer completely blindly names a target. Just understand that when anybody's looking at this, that's what you're looking at. Blindly having nothing but a target number saying the name of the thing that you're going to be looking at. I'm just going to let that sit with everybody for a second because it's a really special event whenever this happens. I love the energetic feeling, Matt. This is one way that I'm trying to get better myself. I don't always recognize motion and I don't always recognize energy. What were you going through when you got that energetic feeling?
It's tough to say. I don't think that I necessarily feel it myself. It's almost like I'm observing it. The
Mm,
session was a little over a month ago. I don't remember exactly, but sometimes I do remember that this one was abundantly clear. It was very clear. I got this, yellow ball of energy. And I think, the rest of my description is kind of based off of that, right? Because there's only a few
mhm.
things that like a massive ball of energy could be. Um, but it is. It's I want to, make sure people understand and inspire them to practice more, and if they haven't practiced, to start remote viewing. You're correct, where like the act of getting a Targ 7 where you name the target and you're on a platform, whether it's mine or social RV or whatever, where it's blockchain authenticated, right? You can prove to anyone
Yeah,
that it was completely blind, and
yeah,
you name the target you name an image before you see the image. It's such a surreal experience because our current paradigm says that's impossible. You're literally witnessing the impossible. It feels like you just saw a ghost, literally.
yeah, yeah. That is the way it feels.
It is.
It's it's walking through a door that you can't really walk back out of. So I just really I wanted to take a second and just highlight and celebrate this session for you because it was a really important one. It was very special. I loved just because I can commiserate with this. I love that it gave you a 9.
All right.
And then down here, you're reacting to it like, how did this not give it a 10? It's a nuclear bomb explosion. So I had the Titanic session over on Social RV where I named the Titanic, and it gave me a number 2 out of 10. It's like, you didn't get number 1. I was like, well, what was the other one? Come on, man.
Yeah, the AI is super goofy. I mean, it's gonna get better over time. Because
Yes, you're
obviously
right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just because I explained to people also it's decoy based. So, and this is people commonly, misunderstand this. They think that the AI is rating it objectively, like just by the image itself. You're not giving the AI the target image and the impression and saying rate closeness on a scale of 1 to 10. It has the your impression, the target image, and the 9 decoy images, and it ranks the 10 images blindly. It doesn't know which one's the real one in closeness. So maybe I'll look through the target pool one day just for fun and try to figure out which. I could probably look back in my logs and see which target image it thought was closer than this one. That should be I should do that more. Examine when the AI is a little bit goofy. Like look at all the decoys and try to figure out what its train of thought was.
That whole process is a whole science in ARV, trying to find targets that are so different from each other that the judge will have an easier time picking which one was the one that this viewer was describing. And it's very difficult. Data overlap is a huge problem with random targets. And it's one of the arguments that skeptics have is that you can, if you break any picture down into foundational language, you can find commonalities because of overlapping commonalities in perception and language. You can find that was where I started. When I jumped into remote viewing, I was like, this is definitely a mirage that's created by overlapping commonalities in language and perception. And then once you start doing it, you realize that that's not the case. But yes, every AI is goofy. Every AI has little hiccups like this. We would not have proven statistical significance the way that we have in this community without AI. It would be impossible to do it as a volunteer project like we have been doing. So, yes, AI is goofy. I'm not an AI evangelist by any far stretch of the imagination, but it is a tool that individuals can use to empower efforts like this. What is your site's p-value is something like 0.0001 right now or something
It's
like that, right?
astronomically low, and social
Yeah,
RV is the same way. And people, this is I don't I mean I've thought about it and I can kind of understand it. Greg Kolodziejczyk's a 13-year ARV experiment, like extraordinarily low p values, like high z score. You look at like the Applied Precognition Project, like very high trial numbers. Even if the edge is small, if you have high trial numbers in like a blind decoy based system, whatever, you're going to reach a very high level of statistical significance. I know that Chase is, he's commissioned an academic study on social RV's data. Um, this stuff I truly believe is about to change the world. We really are on the front line of something that I feel very lucky that we're able to be involved with this at this stage before it's really blown up.
we have to figure out some way to explain it while we're showing it to people. There are so many times where people who are in the paranormal discussion, people who are familiar with psychic phenomenon, first of all, that word has been so successfully stigmatized. Culture just rejects the concept of any sort of psychic phenomenon. So we're now calling it different things. We're trying to call it psi, and we're trying to call it, remote viewing as a term was designed to avoid the stigma of the word psychic. Nobody wants to be caught dead next to the word psychic. It feels like toxic gas. But once people have been introduced to the reality that that's what they're looking at, then they have a framework for what to expect. But when we try and wander around that concept of a psychic experience, then people are like, what am I looking at? What's the point of this? Why are you just describing this picture and telling me that's important? And then you tell them that you described it blindly, and they're like, got it. So this is a psychic experience. So we got to get better at presenting this whole thing because it should change the world. But the culture has been so inoculated against the idea of psychic phenomenon being real that we have a real barrier to push against.
My perspective, and I've been dealing with that a lot recently because obviously I'm trying to build basically a company utilizing the precognitive effect. Um, now in the research done on, AirV Collective and these other platforms. And I've had to confront that a lot because, when you're trying to raise capital, how you talk about things is almost important as the thing itself, right? There's like a
Yeah.
certain way you got to talk about things, and you have to present like a certain model, and it has to meet certain criteria, etc. And I've really gone back and forth, and I've done a lot of thinking about how to present it. There was a period in my, fundraising journey in the last month or two where I was basically like making up, looking back at it, I was basically making up mumbo jumbo to just avoid saying words where if the venture capital firm or whoever Googled it, it would say pseudoscience. I think at one point I was using the phrase human predictive intelligence. Looking back at it, what a waste of breath. Why am I It's precognition, it's remote viewing. And
Yeah.
where I'm at now is I think the correct course of action, at least for me, is to lean into it. And the reason I think that I and everyone else can lean into it is because the data's there. If we were
Yep.
coming at this with no objective data, no statistical significance, no
Yep.
proof, and we were, using, psychic, whatever, we'd get laughed out of the room. If you
Yep.
go and you present, some sort of a psychic effect, or you present a precognitive effect, or remote viewing statistical significance, and you have absolutely bulletproof data, there's nothing anyone can say. And if they do say something, if they do continue to reject it in the face of this data, you don't want their attention anyways, is my perspective.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. So many of these people, though, are in a position of decision making. I remember there was McMonagle did an interview where he was talking about dealing with the Department of Defense staff. And this guy was between him and, or no, it was Robert Gates. That's who it was. It was regarding the submarine viewing session that he did. And Gates said, even if you sat me down and proved this to me, I still wouldn't believe it. And that's what you're fighting against is there are people in decision making roles who believe more strongly in their own individual life experience than they believe in empirical data. And so it's like we are we're trying to run through a wall. And I think we can, but we're going to get bloody when we do it. And I'm all right with that. I love that you're all right with that too. We're gonna need that. Um, yeah. Precognition. Can we talk about that real quick?
Of course.
I don't know that that's all remote viewing is. It could be that there's a clairvoyant element. It could be that there is some. Um, Russell Targ talked about the quantum hologram, where you're pulling information from some high frequency rendering of reality that includes every possible combination of events in infinity, right? It's possible, whatever. None of that matters because you can talk about it like it's precognition. Like that's an easy to understand language, vocabulary that people have. And they've had their own experiences that have felt precognitive. Everyone has. That's a very common human experience that, man, that's really weird that I just thought that was going to happen and then it happened. Yes, remote viewing could be any number of things. Because it is definitely that thing sometimes, I think it's okay to just talk about it like that one box. We know that the target picture was not assigned to this target ID until after the user submitted their session data. Therefore, this is a documented case of precognition on demand. I think that formula by itself, that we are trying to pioneer a technology of precognition on demand so that people can call up these experiences that they have randomly in their everyday lives and use them. We can talk about it that way successfully. And yes, it might be many more things than that, but we can whittle the world down to a more manageable size by just calling it that one thing.
Yeah,
And
my mental model that I've developed recently thinking about this stuff, and why I refer to it more as precognition now, is exactly that reason that you stated. The correct target was not even assigned to you until after you submitted your session data, right? the information didn't exist until after the session, at the time that you were gathering the session data. That I think falls more closely precognition, visual precognition, whatever you want to call it. Whereas I think if I think remote viewing is a more appropriate term when you talk about the scenarios of when they were using it for military intelligence, right? When they were
Sure.
trying to find a downed Soviet plane in Africa that they know exists in the current moment, they don't know where, right? The information exists at the point in time they're gathering information. They're viewing its location remotely, right? Whereas with precognition, it's not decided yet. So that's the mental model that I like to look at it for that exact reason that you stated.
Yeah. It's easy to understand, it's easy to talk about, and it's easy to begin getting opportunities for study. And the larger, more complicated picture will hopefully become clearer as we study this thing more. But right now, it's just a matter of getting resources and time and opportunity to dig into it. And your project, um, being able to assemble this many people, now you have some signals in the noise. Now you have some people out there who definitely can do this at a higher rate. Collect them in teams, study the shit out of it. Like you're in a unique position. And so is Chase. And there are, I hope there continues to be this incentive to make the best use of that unique position you guys are in because you have piles of data. Let's look at the next one. I love this session also. And I love your reaction to
This
it.
is my favorite one of all time.
It was incredible. How many sessions in were you when you did this? This was like early on, right?
Yeah, this was probably the first like 70, 80, something around there if I had to guess.
All right, let's look at your text. Curved protrusions off of a main body. I love that just starting off. Um, Almost like eggs coming off of the main body. White, solid, large, feels structure like permanent. There's so much good stuff with that. Daytime, outdoors, looking at a structure feels kind of high class. Every single descriptor that you had was on target. I love the almost like eggs coming off of a main body. And I love what your AI did with that.
Yeah,
Like,
isn't that cool?
yeah, it understood what it was that you were trying to communicate. And that, anyways, you just did a great job.
Yeah, this
Um,
one I really like because of it's also like the weirdness. Like getting a really on point session is cool. When you describe something where you're like when I was describing this session, in the back of my mind, I'm like, I'm gonna get this wrong because there's nothing that exists like this. Like I'm not
yep,
describing a real thing. Like what kind of high class buildings look like there's eggs coming off of them?
yep.
Right? And when you see this target image and you're like, "Oh, there is something." It was correct. It's really fascinating. One thing I want to go into, and I don't have to go into, too much depth in terms of the personal side of it. I'll keep it succinct. But over the past few months, I've had periods of extremely high stress, extremely high personal stress, just because of the amount of risk that I'm taking in my personal life. Like without going into too much detail, I'm very young, and I think there's a great opportunity here. So I'm taking a lot of personal risks in order to pursue this, and sometimes that can be scary. I'm lucky to live in a first world country like where I know that I'm never going to starve, right? I have family still. Um but there's a lot of personal risk in doing this, and sometimes it's wildly stressful. And I have noticed a very very steep correlation in between periods of extremely high stress and really good precognition remote viewing outcomes. This and we don't have to get into specific details, but I think I reached out to you when I was very stressed. I think that was this time period. I think
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah. So
That makes sense.
I remember
Do
it.
you
So
remember? Because I encouraged you to dig into the phenomenon more yourself. That's
yeah.
right. This was right
Yeah.
after that.
So yeah, so I mean, I had the peak of stress like a Sunday night. This
Yeah.
session, I had if you look back like at this period, I had like crazy good sessions all week. And then this was on I believe either a Thursday or a Friday night. And And I want to give another really, cool thing about this. I my hit rate, my target contact rate was like 80% this week after this peak of high stress. It
I
was
remember you sent
absolutely
me a
nuts.
list of incredible hits.
It
It
was
was like
it was
one
the
after another
weirdest
after
thing.
another.
Dude, I was losing my mind. And you want to hear something even weirder? Right after this session happened, I was supposed to go have dinner with my parents. It was either a Thursday or a Friday night. I lived 20 minutes from my parents. I drove over to their place, have dinner with them. I did this session and I drove over to my parents' place and I couldn't believe it. I was thinking about this session. I was I was like, is this a simulation? I was like, what's going on? It was absolutely astounding. And I went over and I had dinner with my parents and I was telling them about this because I was so fired up about it. And
Mhm.
I was trying to get my parents to understand this. My parents are Gen X, they're in like their mid 50s. They're not really on board with this sort of thing. Like they don't really understand it. I said, "Dad, in order for you to understand this, it's a random target pool of 300 images. I'm going to do a session in front of you. I'm going to do one session." I had the confidence to do a single session live in front of my parents who at that time especially thought I was crazy, right?
Yep.
And if just based off chance, like if this was chance, I have maybe a 10 to 20% chance of getting any like decent, just off of chance, details correct or lining up with the
Hmm.
target image. I did a target image and we don't have to find it, but it was a black keyboard and a black mouse, or like a dark navy purple mouse on like a white desk. And the thing that I described sitting in front of my dad, putting it in the text box, was curved, almost dark navy blue, purple object, extremely light background. It was a perfect hit. And I showed
Hmm.
my dad, and that was such a surreal experience to take the risk of doing a session in front of, a family member, someone that I care a lot about, and, taking that massive risk. You're good, you can come in. And having it pay off, right? It's such a massive risk, and it was such a good session. So having those two things lined up was such a surreal experience.
Hmm. You had mentioned in a previous conversation we had the law of attraction. And that's one of those things that's it's very difficult to measure scientifically, but anecdotally, if I care a lot about getting a about showing somebody an example in front of them, because finally somebody who I've been trying to contact about this particular topic, I've got their attention. If I want to do a session right in front of them, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get something that'll blow their hair back. That's happened enough times now where it feels like it's I don't know what I think it really is just care. We talk a lot about the subconscious. I think the subconscious, it needs emotion as fuel almost.
Mm,
Like there if you don't care, you might get something out of it just by way of the thing functioning. But if you care a whole lot, it could be that the subconscious, it not only wakes up, it is fully online. And it's like, this person needs me right now. It's a strange experience. Um,
yeah.
but doing remote viewing in front of people should happen more. I've been wanting to do live demonstrations, and I'm going to do live demonstrations at some point. I would like a group of us to do it. I want to get displacement events on film.
Yeah.
That moment where everybody realizes that they've described the same incorrect piece of data, like that by itself is a whole other aspect of this phenomenon that we need to dig into, because that's what makes it very real for people whenever you do it in a group setting, because
Mm.
they know it's impossible. We're looking at a picture of a river, and you and I both described the Lincoln Memorial. There is no way that should have happened. Also, who had that idea first? Was it in your head first, or was it in my head first? And then everybody is just stuck in a mystery. That we need to get that on
Craig, that
camera.
that's a great idea. I think we should do that because, I've thought about doing live sessions like in a podcast form before, and the problem that first comes to mind is like people are going to think you cheated, right? But we have websites like
Yep.
Social RV or ARV Collective where it's blockchain authenticated. So you can do the session live and it's on an infrastructure that's provable. So I think we
We
should
should
do
come up.
that.
I'm kind of a jerk sometimes. We should come up with a derogatory term for people who instantly say that you're cheating without having done any research at all. There
That's
should be a
great.
term, like we should have some sort of a community that's, like a chat that's watching on a Twitch feed or something like that. And they should just be able to throw out this derogatory term if you claim that somebody is cheating without having done no research at all. Like, I'm not a fan of calling people names, but if anybody deserves a derogatory term, it's people who will besmirch the reputation of somebody else having done no research at all.
That's hilarious. We got to figure out. I'm gonna run that by AI and see if it can come up with something.
Yeah, there
That's
you
hilarious.
go.
Yeah, dude, there's so much opportunity for content. Like, dude, live streaming, live remote viewing sessions. Why is no one doing that? Just go on Twitch, go on Social RV, whatever, where the session
Yeah.
authenticity is provable. Like, I think people should be doing that. That's such a good idea. And so, what I think we should do, Craig, let's do another one of these. Let's say in a week or something like that, and let's do some live sessions. I'll do a few, you'll do a few. We'll do some on Social RV, we'll do some on ARV Collective, and we'll do
It's
the
a good
live
idea.
session and we'll do the live analysis.
I would ask, if we're going to do this, I need time.
Okay.
That's my problem
That's
is,
okay.
and it's not a problem. It's my process. I have a number of full form remote viewing sessions that I've put up on my YouTube where I put the full thing up, and
Hmm.
the entire session took like 35, 40 minutes. And there was a large segment of it where I wasn't talking because, and this is one of the issues. On maybe this will fix it, Matt. What if you and I were monitors for each other? What if we went back and forth as monitors? Or if we had more than you and I, if we had a number of viewers? I don't know if we could get like Higher Minded or Lucky
We could
Star.
we could get some people.
If we did that, then what could happen is one person, we could revolve the monitor role, and you might get faster data when it comes to that. Because my issue is, without a monitor, I spend a lot of time bilocated. And if you're familiar with the phraseology and all this, bilocation is what happens whenever a viewer disassociates from their physical position in, the real meat space, and is stuck wandering around in the remote viewing environment and sort of loses track of reference of time. And so I can let 4 or 5 minutes go by and not realize that I haven't been saying or writing anything because I'm wandering through the remote viewing environment looking for sensory impressions and waiting, and trying to maintain thoughtlessness.
Yeah.
But if you have a monitor, then what you're doing is you're reacting to somebody else's questions that you don't know are coming.
They pull
And
you out of it.
that's better. That's better. They pull you out of it. Yeah.
I think that's
So
such a good idea. We should do that. And also, like, if you do take time, that's not it's not really that much of an issue because like you can edit it after, and the sessions are provable, right? Like it's okay if you edit it because like
yep.
the authenticity is provable. Craig, I think that's a great idea. We should do that. I'm gonna reach out to a couple remote viewers, or maybe for the first one we do just me and you. Dude, we could do like a weekly thing. We could do this weekly. I think that
We
the
should do
community
that.
would love this.
Yep. And also getting misses, we should make sure all of that is public.
Yep.
Every everything we should publish the misses also,
100%.
because people need to walk into this topic with the understanding that it doesn't work all the time. That's part of the thing we need to be studying. Why are there misses? Why does this not work all the time? So yeah. Anyways,
Sick.
you have more on here. I want to go through
So
at least one more,
Craig,
unless you got to go.
yeah, I actually do have to bounce. If you want, did you say you were free another day this week? Didn't you say another day?
I'm